name is Jeanne Sparrow, and I have spent over 30 years in radio and television. And in this latest adventure of mine, I'm speaking, consulting, and sharing what I've learned along my journey about success in life. I believe that the source of our biggest successes comes from the value that we bring to others when we are able to express our truest, most authentic selves. It's something I call fearless authenticity. I started this podcast to have conversations with people from all walks of life about what fearless authenticity really looks and feels like. What happens when we find and follow our passions and our mission, and how the highest expressions of who we are is what really serves others. We're going to talk about it all in this podcast. I wanted to get real. I wanted to be honest and open about everything, about the ups and the downs, the distractions and the doubts, the goals and the dreams, the failures, the triumphs, and every single thing in between. I hope it gets deep, because that's where we find the best stuff. That's where it lives. But it's also about fun, because honey, if it ain't fun, it ain't worth doing. And all of the ways that we find to move forward, to push through, to make our dreams come true, and engage with the world in the way that we were created to. So if you are ready to live life and dare to live it as big as you can, and be brave, be free, and be you, then let's learn how to do it together from people who know. Welcome to Fearless Authenticity with Jeanne Sparrow. Now, today's guest is a fearless leader and the epitome of authenticity. She's a brilliant technologist who created CS for All, Computer Science for All, the program that integrated tech learning into the core curriculum at Chicago Public Schools, becoming the model for computer science education across the country when President Obama saw its success. She is a champion for underrepresented groups in technology, advocating for more inclusion in the industry as the president and CEO of AnitaB.org, a global nonprofit dedicated to empowering women in technology. She was named to Crain's Chicago Business Tech 50 in 2020. She is a fellow Northwestern alum. She is my soror, member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And she is one of the kindest, bravest, dare to do it all people that I've ever had the honor of knowing and working with. Please give the warmest welcome to one Ms. Brenda Darden Wilkerson.
Oh, Jeanne, too generous. Thank you so much. It's so great to be here. That was such an honor, the intro. Thank you.
And thank you for wearing our colors today, girl. If I knew it was going to be in the red, I would have had it on. And you know what? I couldn't even fit everything in on my intro for you. There's
please.
so many things and so much stuff of your life and the things that you have done in your world that I want to talk to you about, because as I've gotten to know you over the years, working with you on the Grace Hopper celebration, through the pandemic and everything like that, you have been an inspiration for me. And I watch how you're an inspiration for the women that you lead on your team and the women who are in technology who depend on you and look to you for guidance in their world. What does it feel like to have gone through the journey that it took for you to get here, and then have people look to you for answers?
Well, it's always humbling. I am a learner. I feel like still know so little. And so when people look to me, I'm always surprised. And all I can do is share my experiences. The one thing that I always like to share when people are talking about, what did it take, and, what did it take to be there? I always say, do not shun the experiences you're having in your life right now, especially for young people, right? Because they're like, why am I here? This is off my path. I had the same thoughts as, I went through this sort of circuitous route to get here. But I can say by the grace of God, I needed all of those experiences to get here, to make sure that I was prepared as possible to take on the challenges that are before us. And I believe that they are the challenges of our time. If we can, I hate to say fix tech, but if we can make tech the best it can be, all of our lives will be impacted for the better.
Right.
Conversely, if we don't, right, there's a converse to that. So I would just say that I got to learn things at every step of the way that gives me great empathy for all the players in this game. And I'm just honored and humbled to be able to be here.
Oh, that's the thing. This is the thing about you. It's the servant leadership for me, right? It's the fact that, and I watch how humbly and honorably you treat every person that you come into contact with. And I want to talk now, though, about the circuitous route that you took to get, because I was surprised to find out that when you went to Northwestern as an undergrad, you actually started in pre-med, biochem, in engineering, and then you took a couple computer science classes, and then here you are.
And here we are.
Let's talk about, like, because most of the people I know who were pre-med, especially at Northwestern, because it's like it's almost like half right? The incoming class of every year was pre-med, and then by like year 2, it's like, well, let me after you take a couple of those weed out classes, you're like,
oh boy,
but that doesn't sound like your story though. But let's talk about what that process was like for you, and when you decided that the new thing was the thing, was the path, and that knowing that happens down here. What was that process like for you?
Well, the key word there is process, right? It wasn't a thing or 2 things or 10 things. It was multiple things. So so I was a nerd, still am, proud of that. And a STEM kid. Both my parents were educators. So I had no choice but to be a good student. It was that or move out, right? As a little kid. And so I was good at math. I was good at all the STEMs, but having grown up in a all Black neighborhood, and I always like to say we were all Black, but we were not all poor, because people always make these assumptions, right? The powers that be, which would impact my direction in the future, made the decision that schools like ours didn't need computer science. So I didn't have computer science. I had never been introduced to it. And as you mentioned, when I got to Northwestern, planning to become a doctor, which I had wanted to be since I was a kid. In my house, we were all very artsy, but my mother gave us choices: doctor, lawyer, engineer. What's it gonna be? And I actually wanted to help people. So I wanted to be a doctor. I used to watch surgeries and weird stuff like that as a kid. So I was on that path. And then when I got there, Northwestern is one of those universities that doesn't have a pre-med major. So you have to fit all that stuff in another major, which is how I ended up with biochem. So, it was a series of things. It was being, the token for the first time in my life, right? Being around no one that looked like me, around a bunch of men, because also in engineering, it was very male, not a lot of women, no Black people. Maybe there were some in other grades, but in mine, not really. And it was very isolating. I even had a professor ask me in one of my classes why I was here. Why are you here? So it was difficult. And then at the same time, I was learning how medicine is practiced in this country. And that was the thing that turned me around. I learned that, most medicines are not tested on women, which is why there are adverse side effects to women. And then we're told we're just emotional. That's why. And so I really, as a youngster, was like, okay, do I get in there and try to change it, or do I not? And so I actually was pre-med till junior year. So wow. Jeanne, I graduated with all kinds of stuff that was not part of my major, right? Because when you switch, then you add a bunch of stuff. So it was really hard. It was hard. And I actually tried several other things. I was like, do I do math? Do I do chemistry? And then because I had taken those 2 computer science classes, and I thought, that was kind of interesting. I kind of like that. That's what gave me the start towards thinking about computer science.
Wow. And the fact that you had the openness to be able to make that choice, I think is so commendable, especially at that age, because we're talking about 18, 19, 20, when we don't know a
we don't know anything. We thought we did.
But we think we do, right? But inside, there's always that kernel of doubt. So here's the first quote of yours that I want to talk about. You said it in one of the articles that I read. If you don't know who you are, you won't act with the power you have. Right. That is such a strong, like there are layers to that, Brenda. I want to talk about how that concept played into your early years and how you carry it through, because who we are changes from time to time. But a lot of times we take on these roles, and this is the thing I talk about so much with fearless authenticity, whether it's to clients or anybody else, is that we all have these roles that we play. Yes, we have to fulfill these roles. We enjoy these roles, all of these different identities and purposes that we have in life, but it's not who we are.
Yes.
So how does that play into those that, 20-year-old Brenda versus who you are now and how it's changed along the way?
Yeah. Oh, there's so much there. I'm going to try to keep it as short as I can. So first of all,
we got time. We got time, child.
Well, look, first growing up under Lawrence and Lily, that's my mom and dad's name. There was very little space for error. My mother would say, now don't you embarrass me about everything, right? I had to be perfect. We were teachers' kids. And I don't know what anybody knows about that. That's almost as bad as being a preacher's kid, right? Wow. There was no room, right? There was no room. And my personality was such that, especially being the middle kid, that I was going to conform. I absorbed that conditioning, right? So you said something in the intro about figuring out, knowing who you are and bringing that goodness. The one thing that I did learn from my mom that carried all the way through was always leave the situation better than you found it. If you're going to get into a relationship with a friend, leave them better than you found them. If you're going to work somewhere, leave it better than you found them. And when you can't bring your best self and you can't do that because of who you are and you're not comfortable with who you are either, then that's two negatives. So it's one thing if the situation doesn't receive you, but you're being authentic. But I realized I was being what everybody else wanted me to be. And so I had to really sit down and figure out what Brenda wanted. I give my mom credit because actually I lost my dad freshman year in college. I have to give my mom credit. She put up with that. She wasn't happy. She's like, what are you doing now?
I think we have the same mother.
I think so.
Because maybe it's teacher mama, but yeah.
Right. It's deep, right? But I think that we carry that with us in terms of how we serve, right? Because we're always constantly looking at ourselves to say, are we what we need to be to serve in this situation, right? So I feel like the change came when I knew I didn't want to be that kind of doctor. I wanted to be authentic. I wanted to really help people, not hurt people. I'm creative, even though she was like, those people starve. You can't do that. And so it actually turned out that over time, my creativity and the desire to help people and all those experiences I got in between, which were deep, is what allowed me to get to this point. But I think you change when you allow yourself to see what gives you that spark when you're doing it, right? Some of us, because we've been trained, know how to do several things. So you just do what you're told. But that thing that gives you that spark and that you can do and it's not work, that's the thing that you're supposed to be doing at least then. So, and as you said, you change over time, but I've always wanted to create and I've always wanted to have an impact on a lot of people.
And you are doing that. That is what you are doing right now. How does that feel?
I don't think of it that way. It's interesting. When I first got to Chicago public schools, after a whole bunch, I had been a technologist. And then when we had our first baby, I didn't want to wear that beeper. That's going to show my age. We were wearing the beeper so we could babysit the software at night, And I was like, I'm going to be babysitting the baby. I don't want to babysit the software. So I took a step into education first at the community college level. And so when I got an opportunity to go to the K-12 level, I I saw the situation, which I want to talk about with that, what I saw there. I remember praying specifically. We had 400,000 students in Chicago public schools at the time. I asked to be able to do something that would impact all 400,000 students. I didn't know what that was going to be, but I saw a much bigger situation for the underrepresented folks than I had in Kansas City, Missouri, where I grew up. The Missouri one, by the way.
Y'all are real specific. Y'all are so specific. Y'all are so specific in Kansas City about that.
We're like, Missouri. So I saw the same drama unfolding, and I was like, if there's something I can do to change that for the majority, because Chicago public schools is 85% Black and brown. So I thought, we cannot have this happening to all these kids. I didn't have any idea. So I did that work, but it didn't occur to me the impact until I helped New York do it. And when they announced, and then the night before they announced, the woman that I had been working with, she called me, she said, Brenda, I just wanted to let you know we're about to announce, and we're going to call it what you called it. And it's going to impact 1.1 million students. Then I thought, that's when it occurred to
me. And then here come Barack. Excuse me, ma'am. How did that feel?
What an honor. I remember exactly when I was told that was the case. I remember I was in the Eisenhower room in the White House office building. We were all invited to meet, and a particular gentleman walked up to me and said, and I didn't know who he was. He was like, Brenda. And first of all, I'm like, he said, just wanted to let you know, we patterned this after the work that you did in Chicago. We patterned a lot of this after what you were. Thank you for your work. And I was so struck by it that I didn't even ask him who he was. I was like, thank you. And I was like, who is that? I don't even know.
Who was it?
His name is Kumar Garg, and he was a major mover and shaker in that system. He was part of the Office of Technology and Policy, Science, Technology, and Policy, I think it's called OSTP.
Wow.
And I remember I didn't find out I had actually went looking for his picture. I was just too struck to ask him, okay, who's talking to me?
So you don't realize your impact, even though you prayed for it. You don't realize the impact you're having until it's already done. Is that because you're focused on the work of it?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely focused on the work of it, but I don't think that that's unique to me. I think a lot of women, and may I say, Black women, are just about doing the work, right? It's just about getting it done, having the impact, and knowing that underneath there, we've got to do way, 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 way more than other people to prove ourselves, right? I felt like I was always proving myself, especially in terms of this work. Everybody's talking about computer science now, but they weren't then. And I remember my bosses, they were like, what are you even talking about? There was all this, what are you even talking about, in so many rooms, right?
What year was that you started doing it?
I started doing this work in 2009.
Wait, so 10, 15, not even 15 years ago. Right. Oh, wow.
They were like, why? In fact, I actually found out 6 months after I started my job at Chicago Public Schools, not in so much like, specific terms, but I could tell that my boss actually had brought me in to close down the IT programs in the high schools because they had all been offshored. So in terms of their thought process, these kids, and I hate when people refer, that sets me on fire. These kids don't need that. Now, it was at the 6 richest high schools in Chicago. And the demographic makeup of those.
Let me guess. Peyton, Whitney Young.
Not Peyton, Whitney Young, go ahead.
Whitney Young, Lynn Bloom.
Northside.
Oh, yeah, Northside Prep, Lane Tech.
Lane Tech.
And I'm missing one. There's another one.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
But that's where they were. And of course, I'm happy that they're there. But I'm like, what about these children? Right. And they're like, so it was this whole process. And having grown up in a situation where people hadn't said it to me, but the very absence of it in my school told me that there were policymakers in our district who'd made the same decision.
Right.
And so now I'm a district administrator. What can I do? And that's when I set out to do it.
And look at you. And look at you. But you know what? I want to dig deeper into that these kids thing, because you've said a few things that I think need to be teased out a little bit and talked about in terms of how we overcome. As a Black woman, well, let's start with as a woman, as a Black person, as a technologist, you said there are many rooms, even beginning in school, when you're the one there. And when you go to an elite, predominantly white institution, a PWI, you may hear me say this again, but I remember, even though I was in arts, in the arts and sciences school, so I have a liberal arts degree from Northwestern, but you are often the only Black person in the room. Maybe the only person of color. Like, there might not even be another person of color in the room. And when you talk about the well-meaning people, and I say that with no rancor, or because people do, I think, a lot of times have good intention. There are very few people who are bad actors because that is what they actively choose to do. That is my belief in life. Yes, they do exist, but I think the majority of people, that's not true. But when you talk about going into rooms where people who are making decisions, have that attitude, where you are the only one, where you have a professor ask you what you are doing there, and questioning your ability to be present, how do you combat that inside? Because there's a whole thing that has to happen in here, right, before you can overcome that externally.
I mean, I just have to give credit to God that I got through that, because it was difficult. And then also losing my father at that time. Right. And my mother had a younger sister of mine at home with her that I knew she was leaning on. And I'm just the type of person to try not to be that burden when people have other things to do. I remember Tech, where Tech is. So the rocks that were behind it, because the water was behind it, I would find a set of rocks that looked like there was a set that looked like a big car chair. And when I climbed down and sat in it, I couldn't see Northwestern. And I would sit there. All I could see was water. And I would pretend for a while I wasn't there. Before I would go back into the sub-basement, because that's where the computer system was in the sub-basement. Which
sub-basement? Because there's like four. You're like in the bowels of the earth.
Right? The bowels. And I remember one of my professors looked like he was totally vitamin D deficient. I was like, you spend a lot of time down here. But you know what? I didn't mind being down there. I minded feeling like I didn't belong and that I was not enough. And so it's like, fast forward to all of my different environments that I got to work in. When I saw other people suffering that, whether it was a user, because many times, we nerds, we're kind of arrogant sometimes about our software. And if, you don't understand it, it's, so then I became advocate for users, to be that conduit in between them and the stuff that we created, to make sure that it was user-friendly and that they understood it, because I could empathize, right? Empathy is the thing that would fix so many things, right? If we felt like, okay, how would I feel if somebody treated me that way? Or when I got to the community college, where my students were generally somewhere between 25 and 80, and seriously up more of the upper end. And these are people who had, for whatever reason, not done tech originally. And now they were trying to get into it. And so they were coming back at night or on Saturdays, giving up their family and TV time to learn tech. I could empathize with them because it could have been me. I could have been talked out of it, right? Many of them were talked out of it. That's not for you, honey. Or you're not smart enough. You people don't do that. Fill in the blank. Those words are damaging. And so now here are these people, 40, 50, 60, sitting in my class, trying to change their lives, that I was that bridge for them, because I understood that that could have been me and that it was just wrong anyway. So I feel like being able to have those experiences, so like I said, having been left out, having been almost pushed out, like, why are you here? Has led me to the point where there is just about nothing I haven't seen and can't relate to. And I think that's important. It's hard to do work just intellectually, I think, this type of work, because this is heart work. I'm a nerd. I like this. I'm an egghead. I like learning. I like thinking. I like planning. But some stuff you got to understand to stick with it and to stay in there, even when the pushback is huge. And the pushback is huge from tech and from education, because as I'm sharing, a lot of that stuff starts in education.
Yeah, the foundations are built to, or torn down, maybe is a better word for what that happens. What do you think you got from that car seat on the rocks on Lake Michigan with the water? What did it do for your heart that kept you going?
Yeah. It gave me space to breathe where I wasn't being judged. Right? I could be, and you're gonna really laugh at this, right? So I'm an introvert, and I really see myself as invisible. It's funny, when we were growing up, my sister and I, we would go places, go shopping or whatever, and I would watch people, and she would go, "Stop staring," and I was like, they can't see me. She's like, "Brenda, you're right there. They can see you," and I'm like, they can't see me, right? So I just don't think that I'm seen. That situation made me feel hyper seen. And as an introvert, I didn't really enjoy it, especially because it was negative, right? So when I sat on the car seat, it was my time to recharge, talk to God, ask what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to do this? And sometimes I wanted to give up. But somehow it was like, going back in there, turning that deck of cards, telling my age, submit your deck.
It's like Uno, reverse. You better go back. Go back where you came from. And then put it down like you mean it.
That's right. And also, the empathy of when you don't get it right the first time. I know what it means to not get it right the first time. So sometimes, those failures make you more human than if you just got it right all the time.
Right. And I love the word heart work, because I think so many times, you mentioned earlier how people say things about we're too emotional as women. Like, people forget that emotions are what make all of us motivated, all of us, men, women. It's just seen as something different in the way that men express it versus the way we do, and then the cultural assumptions that go along with it. What is the biggest thing that you've had to unlearn? The biggest challenge you've had that made you face something that you perhaps didn't like about yourself, that you decided, whether it was an unlearning or something you had to layer on top?
Well, I mean, I'm like I said, I'm a learner. I'm always, I feel like I know about 20% of what I need to do what I do. But I feel like one of the things I had to unlearn was that, and I'm still working on this, that as women, we think that if we just do the work, that it's going to be seen and you're going to be rewarded. And we know that that's not the case. I mean, I worked hard at my projects in Chicago Public School. It's interesting that, I got to walk the halls of the White House, but in the district, there was no respect at all. None. My bosses were like, whatever, no money. I did the work for probably 2 years, my job and that job, no money, no budget, no staff. So I had to gather volunteers. But I thought that when I worked hard, they would see it. And that's it's still a bitter pill to swallow, because we're trained that our work will speak for us, and not as women. Not at all. And I learned that along the way in all of my experiences. I think I also had to unlearn I had to take what I know about my trade, computer science, technology, and apply it to the work that I'm doing, which is just constantly iterate. It doesn't have to be perfect before it goes out. It doesn't have to be perfect, because it had to drop that perfectionism thing. Boy, right?
Girl,
You,
I'm still unlearning. I'm
oh
working
yeah,
on
me
that.
too.
You got some tricks on that one,
Me too. I
cuz
don't know. I mean, we might need to put our heads together on that one. But yeah, this just iterate and go, iterate and go. And I feel like I'm grateful for the opportunity I had at Chicago Public Schools because in the end, and many famous women have said this, them disregarding me actually gave me the cover to just iterate that I don't have now.
yeah, it's hard making mistakes in public.
Right. There it was like, it's just her. So I could just, and they were not expecting anything. They weren't watching. They were trying to hide me in the closet. And at the end of the day, it allowed me to do some things, screw up some stuff, not get it right without the same sort of pressure that, sometimes comes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, once you have a success, then everybody's looking for the next one. That's the other thing.
Right.
Wow. There is so much in there. I want to move on, shift to something a little bit different, because one of the things that I feel like is in that piece about the work not speaking for itself is because I actually believe that the reason why women are disregarded for our work is because we don't trumpet it from the hilltops when we do it. We too busy doing it to be able to go. But if you got a big mouth and you're able to talk about it, and you have the permission to talk about it, because I think that's what the difference is that a lot of men are given the permission to do that, especially majority men are given the permission and encouraged to talk about it and asked about it, and therefore, whatever. Whereas we as women, I think, often feel that we're bragging or things like that. Here's my question to you. Do you now celebrate your achievements? And how do you celebrate them when they happen, even if it's just a little win?
So, oh no, I probably am still getting maybe a D minus, maybe a D. So the thing that I would add to what you said is we not only the reason we feel like we're bragging is because we're told that we're bragging. The same terms that are given to a man to say he's aggressive, he's a go-getter, we're called bossy, and aggressive means something different for us. Aggressive's good for them, aggressive's bad for us.
It's bitchy for us.
Right. We're bossy, we're hard to get along with, we're all these terms, right? And it's one of the things that I'm learning in terms of the terminology of my work is that what we have to realize is, and I think someone said it last week this way, we were all outside when the fallout happened, okay? Or we're all swimming in the same groundwater. The groundwater is getting into the pool or getting into the lake that we're all swimming in. So even though many times we know that the way we're being addressed or treated is wrong, we still absorb it.
Woo!
We still absorb it. And let me give you an example. So I'm always lifting up people telling me, you can do it. You can do it. You can do anything. Don't you let anybody tell you what you can't do. Then when I got the opportunity for this job, let me tell you what I did. I fought it. I didn't even call the recruiter for 2 months.
Months? I thought you were about to say weeks. Months?
2 months. 2 months. And when I finally called him, I argued with him for another 2 weeks. Why would they want me? I don't understand this. They couldn't possibly want me. Could they want me after I had told everybody, you can do whatever you want to do. You get an opportunity, you go for it. Then I said to him, okay, I'll tell you what, I'm going to send you my resume. That'll do it. That'll put this down.
He already knew it.
But that's in the groundwater.
Yep.
It's
in
the groundwater.
And it gets in here. And more importantly, we talk about that heart work. It lives here.
It's there. And it's also, I think, another thing that we do as women, many times that selfless nature that it takes to care for family and friends means that I can tell you, you can do it, Jeanne. But that's the heavy thing with me.
Right.
So this is the learning, right? As I am preaching to everybody else that I have to learn for myself, not just for my own self good, but so that I can do the work that I'm called to do. Because I almost passed up this opportunity. I can't even imagine, right?
I can't either. I
But
can't either.
I did. And I'm thankful to good friends and family who were like, get it together, girl. Get it together. Get it together.
Wow. Okay, now let's talk a couple of years into your tenure there at AnitaB.org. The pandemic happens.
Yeah.
I know. And you've done a lot of shifting there. You've done a lot of healing because a lot of things, I think, in the tech world have become much more polarized and noticed during the pandemic than ever before. But I think that's true. I think it's a reflection of the world at large.
Yes.
The theme of the last Grace Hopper celebration, which I was honored to be your MC once again, was Dare To. So what are you daring to do now from all the pivots that you've had to do both personally and professionally and for the organization and leading that piece? What are you daring to do now that you've learned from with all that shifting in quarantine and work from home?
Yeah. So, first of all, it was right as we were coming towards the pandemic that I got to work with you first. And I just want everybody to know, if you didn't already know, who I'm talking to and how amazing she is, and the fact that you would take your time and be part of our little thing was
Little.
and you came in and you just rocked it, and changed us. So I was like, whoa, we went up a notch that first day. I will never forget that. So I just wanted to make sure I got that said. Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
So, and that even helped me. That was the beginning of me thinking, okay, let's think about this differently. Because one of the things that I think is important for everybody to know, I got to walk into an organization that had existed for over 15 years. Our founder, our namesake, was a rock star. She died way too early. She had a really amazing fire in her belly and was ahead of her time. So I got to walk in something that was a shift from what she wanted to do, but it sort of took over the Grace Hopper celebration. And it was wonderful and it was rocking and everybody loved it. The problem with that kind of success is it's hard to pivot and it's hard to change, right? Because that's what people want from you. That's what you know how to do. And so sometimes you don't look down the road and make sure you're staying ready for what's coming in the future. And so that was something I had always done before, but it was hard to do. We're like, okay, everybody's like, yeah, but this works. So one lesson I've learned is you've always got to be ready. And one of the things that I used to share with my team, and they used to look at me like, what is she talking about? I was like, we neither want to be Blockbuster nor UPS in the old days. Now, Blockbuster, most people go, Blockbuster. Oh, yes, Blockbuster. They don't even remember them, right? Because they wouldn't shift, and now they're gone.
And not only wouldn't shift, they turned Netflix down.
Right,
they had an opportunity to invest in or buy Netflix. We're like, nah, fam, that's not gonna work out.
Right. It's like that's whoever it was said about the internet, the IBM, the internet thing is a fad, right? But then UPS was at their top of their game. And somebody suggested, internally, maybe we ought to go to next day. And they're like, nah, nobody wants it next day. If they want it next day, they'll just fax it. And then this little company called FedEx comes along. And now, I give it to them. They shifted, right? But in my mind, the position they should have been in should be first because they had the strength. And so I would always preach, we need to always be thinking about what's next. And then bam, now we had to think about what's next, right? Yeah. And so it's like, get ahead of the curve. Stay ahead of the curve. Always be thinking about how the world is shifting, what people might be needing, especially if you're here to serve your customer, not your customer serve you, right? That to me is, and there's a thin line between the two. Actually, it's pretty broad, but it feels like, right?
from a certain angle. It's just like when you close one eye
Yeah.
and you do like that and it looks different, and then you
Yes.
see it at the same, and you're like,
Yeah.
so
Right.
yeah.
So that to me is the wisdom I would share with anybody is you should always be looking out, make sure and test. Am I serving my customer? Am I serving the common good? Because we're a common good organization. What is the common good in tech? So we should always be asking ourselves that, and we are. And what uniquely can we do to impact tech now? Not I forget who it is. It's either the World Health Organization that said something about gender equity by in 212 years or something crazy like that. No, right? That's too long. So always be thinking about what you can do and in the short term to make a difference.
My mom always used to say, well, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready.
Love mama. Mama's
Baby,
so smart.
listen, between Lily and Ethel,
That's right.
I'm gonna just say right now, I think they had it all figured out, but they never got the platforms
Right.
to do that. And it's like
Right.
all of that mother wit
Yes.
and the things, those basic things that we used to be like, ugh,
Right.
you know, when we were younger.
Yes.
I mean, I repeat that to my clients now, and I just go, I'm sorry to have to say this,
Right.
because I know you've heard it before, but there's a difference between what you hear and what you hear and feel, and everything happens at a different time.
Yeah.
You have talked about how three threads can make anything happen when they're woven together. And those three things are passion, determination, and partnership. I often ask people, what do you know you are absolutely right about? And so I ask you, in terms of that, what is it that's so right about those three things?
Well, it really should count for anything. But I think specifically where it's important to consider is hard stuff. One of my favorite books is The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. Because if you're trying to do hard things like change the core requirement for education that hasn't been changed since the 1800s, or diversify tech, for instance, right? You got to be determined. You got to know that what you're doing is the right thing to do, and that like that car chair behind tech, that you don't see anything but that you can't get talked out of it, that you can't get shamed out of it, you can't get deterred in any way. And so that's that determination. But then in order to stay that determined, you got to be passionate. It can't just be intellectual. Because you're going to take so many hits. I'm just going to admit, you're going to take hits. I think it's almost sport for some people to say, wow, that person seems really determined. Let me see what I can do about that. Right? And so you're going to have to be passionate. You're going to have to know that you know that you know that you know that this can be done and that you should be doing it right now. And then the last thing is partnership. Anything that's hard, we need everybody doing it. We need to, and what I found with the work that I did is, no matter the fact that when I started, I felt like I was alone, there were other people who knew this needed to be done. And the passion I feel is what helped us find each other. All of a sudden, there was this person, and there was Jane Margolis and Joanna Good, and there was Deborah Boisvert out in Boston. I mean, people that were on opposite ends of the country. There was no reason for me to run into them, right? But all of a sudden, there they were, and we were passionate together. And 1 + 1 = 42 in that case. So that's why you need all three of those things, because all of them are the flywheel. They build that flywheel effect that allows you to get the impossible done. And Jeanne, we got to do impossible stuff. If we're going to survive this, it's time for the impossible. It's time for all the pilgrims who know how impactful tech is on our world to come on, and let's do it together.
Yep, we got to land on Plymouth Rock, because we don't want Plymouth Rock to land on us. So, Brenda, tell me, what is something that nobody ever asks you about or ever talks to you about that you wish they would?
Wow. That's an interesting one. And you know why it's interesting? Because I don't think that much about me.
Mm. Is there anything, then let me rephrase it. Is there anything that you want to say but haven't found the right entree to say it? And because sometimes the things we want, we feel need to be said, or
Yeah.
the things we want to say, someone needs to open a door or invite that into our world. Has there ever, is there a situation like that for you where you're like, oh, the timing's not right, I'm not going to say it now, or oh, they didn't ask, okay, I'm gonna leave it alone for now, where you just keep saying, well, now is not, now is not. Let's choose now to be the time, if there is something like that that you'd like, that you want to express, that you've not had the opportunity to.
Well, okay, I'm going to say this, and I mean, I think when you get to be of a certain age, that list gets shorter.
Because yes, things
Because you're
start
like,
flying out of your mouth once you turn 50.
you're like, I just, is this not obvious to everyone, right? So I feel like one of the things that really, and I'm sure everybody can relate to this in their own sphere of work, is sometimes the very people you're trying to help are the ones that hinder the most. And I've always scratched my head at that, which is why I love The Matrix, the first one, because it was like he said, some of the same people you're trying to unhook, if they're not for you, they're against you. And that's always been amazing to me, right? It's like we have to recognize our own conditioning. It was like I had to recognize my own conditioning when I didn't call that recruiter back. I realized what was cursing me at that point, and I had to put it aside. I didn't say it was easy. I think people are looking for easy. They're looking for the easy button. It's not going to be easy, but most of the longest distance to truth many times is here, between here and here. Really being able to absorb it and say, okay, I'm the one that needs to change, and here's what I need to change. I think the second thing that I would say is that, and I've started to say this just recently. Before I used to say, and my 5 words are intersectional, gender, and pay parity in tech. I used to say, this is easy. Really, it is easy. If we truly went on merit, if we truly went on what works and the strengths that are necessary to innovate and to make change, we'd all be at the table. Because it's true, right? There's things that only you and I can recognize because of our experiences. There are things like we talked to Haben Garma. Was that life-changing? There are things that
Yes.
only she could tell us. We get it intellectually, but she lives it. So having her at the table, monumental difference, right? But I feel like even though it's easy, here's what's going on. It's never been done before. It's never been, I'm a Trekkie. So I like intersectional, gender, and pay parity, the final frontier. That's right. The final frontier. It's never been done before. So if that makes it better for people, that they're going after something that's never been done before, because many times that's attractive. Okay, it's never been done before. You're happy now? Let's go do it. And by 2025, I don't want to say that anymore. I want us to find something else that hasn't been done before, but let's conquer. Let's go.
Wow. Oh, I just want to take a moment so that I can think about how I want to unpack that later, because there's a lot in there. And for people who don't know who Haben Girma is, she is a disability advocate, and she is one of the most insightful, kind, and forward-thinking people I've ever had the pleasure of interviewing or even seeing speak, because she changed how I saw because she looks at disability as a way of solving problems, because people with disabilities have to solve problems because we've not made it easy for them in the world of able-bodied people.
Yes.
And it's interesting you bring her up, because there are things that I think about very differently now because of Haben,
Mhm.
because of the last virtual Grace Hopper, because of Tim Neat, because of the conversations and the fights that they're having, and questions that they're asking, which I think is actually more important than the fight, right? It's the asking of the question and putting it out there, like, because Haben made a challenge to people. She was like, have you ever thought of what this means and how a fix for disabled people is a fix for everybody? And she used a simple example of the curb cutout.
Yes.
Which, you know, I remember when my dog got disabled. This is going to sound really, it sounds so stupid, but that's when I connected with it. When my dog got on wheels and I started realizing I couldn't cross the street everywhere without lifting him off of the curb to get him onto the street at a crosswalk. I was like, why is, and I even called my alderman. I was like, why is there not a, and then I started seeing the disabled people who are at the elderly building down the street having to step and use their canes and stuff. I was like, there should be a, but the thing is that we have, the thing that was initiated for people in wheelchairs is something that helps anybody, people with strollers, people who are, you know, walking, but maybe a little unsteady. Like, literally, my mind is still blown by that.
Yeah, but there's so many other examples. Like, for instance, the closed captioning that's for the hearing impaired. Many of us use it in order to, like, I read it, you know, to understand or to learn a new language. If I watch something that's in a different language, I'm watching the closed captions. I can hear, but it's benefiting me, right? There's, when Haben also mentioned that the guy who created email created it, right? Where will we be without email? Right. So
I have no idea.
The curb cut effect is so key. And that empathy again, you know, if you just feel like it's all about you, you're the center, and whatever works for you, it's fine. And whatever you're dealing with is your thing. Many times we do that to minoritized people and their experiences all the time. Then we will never get those solutions that Haben talked about. Think about, I mean, and there's so many different ones that we just take for granted. We take for granted. And the data show that more able-bodied people use those ramps than disabled people. But we just take it, again, it's ours, it's not theirs. So that changing in the way that we think and looking out, again, serving your public, understanding who all of your public is. We did a webinar series recently where a woman, I had problems with my earbuds sometimes, and I thought it was just me. It would immediately switch to speakerphone. And what she found is that they were working in AR and VR, and they were testing some hardware, and there were women on the team early on. And what they found is that those earbuds were not tested with people with curly hair.
Girl, stop. Is that the reason why?
Yeah. So when that hair would hit, it would do goofy stuff, stop working, and I'm thinking, oh, it's just me, right? But they didn't have any curly haired person on the team. I mean, and that's a simple thing, but what if you needed that to get down the street, like your disabled people down the street? Or what if you needed that to participate? Like Haben could not participate if there was not hardware and software to connect her. Or when she had to eat that nasty food because she didn't know.
Right. Y'all, let me tell you something. The things that I have learned at the Grace Hopper celebration every year have been insane. But you know what, though? It's those 3 words, it's just me. We always think it's just me when we are feeling put upon or put down or whatever. And it's more of us who think it's just me than not.
It's true. It's true. If you had to ask me, and I want to give you this, ask me what I'm most proud of this year's Grace Hopper celebration, because the women answered what they dared to and what they want others to dare to in ways that have changed our lives forever. And I was so proud of those conversations.
Yeah, you started some pretty hard, challenging, let's not call them hard, challenging conversations. Because when it was all done, we were all crying, and it was beautiful because we felt like we had made a breakthrough and taken back some of our power.
That's right.
So let me end with this question, because I love ending on this vibe. When, Brenda, do you feel like you are at your best, truest, most authentic expression of who you are?
When I get to make a difference, when I'm not wasting someone's time, when I can alleviate suffering, when I can give someone hope.
And that is how we'll end. Thank you so much. I am so honored to be able to call you friend, to work with you. And it's a mutual admiration society.
It is, because this has been such an honor to know you, to be here with you. And thank you for the important work that you do for all of us.
I'm honored. Thank you, Brenda.
My pleasure.
All of my guests make me think. They make me consider how I'm moving in my fearless authenticity and how I can push it even further and be even better at it. Because, it's always a journey. So here's some of my favorite things that Brenda shared with us today. Don't shun the experiences that you are having in your life right now, because you need all of them, especially the failures, to be as prepared as possible for the challenges that you will have to face. I think a lot of times I think I've said this before, it's like we want to skip to the good part, like they say on those memes on social, and we just can't, because all of those things are lining up to get us ready for the big things that we do. And we all want to do big things in some way, shape, or form, right? It looks different in all of our lives, but every single step we take leads us to the next one and prepares us for it. That's the piece, that preparation. It's like our mother said, you don't have to get ready when you stay ready. And the other piece I loved is that as women, we think that if we just do the work, that it will be seen and be rewarded. But part of the success is also showing it, talking about it, sharing it, and making sure it's seen. And because of all the work that she does around equity for women in technology, but I think that applies to all of us, and anybody who has not stepped forward, woman or not, that, sometimes you have to be your best marketer, right? You have to brand yourself. You have to get out there and say, hey, listen, I did this. Look at what I did. Look at what I did. We did it when we were kids. What stopped us? And then finally, the thing that really sits in my heart that she said, if you don't know who you are, you will not act with the power you have. And getting to know ourselves can be challenging. It's okay. That's why they got therapists. Thank you so much to Brenda Darden Wilkerson for sharing, for being our guest today. It is an honor to know and learn from you. And thank you, as always, to my Fearless Authenticity production team for making this pod happen. Thanks to you, our listeners, for your support. Please follow me at JM Sparrow on social. And if you like what you hear here, please let us know. Rate, review, and follow us on the iHeart app, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also share with your community if you feel so inclined. We also want to hear from you. Send us your thoughts, your ideas, your comments, your questions. Let us know how you are being your best, truest, most authentic self. We want to hear those stories. We want to share them. We want to shout you out. And if you have any ideas about guests you want us to have on the pod, please send those too. I can't know everybody, and I can't possibly think of everything, even though I'd love to. So I'd love to know who you would like to hear from, because all those stories make all of us so much better. This has been Fearless Authenticity with Jeanne Sparrow. Thank you, and we'll see you again soon.